want to drop back a little bit to the emotions that you had. You talked about the team and all of those things, and that certainly is part of it, but you also be a little selfish for a minute, right? Talk about how that felt to realize that, man, you've been a race car driver your whole life, right? You'll always be a race car driver. That's not changing, but you're being a full-time Cup driver is a lifestyle, right? It is you're that thing every minute of the day, and so you always knew you were going to be that every week, and you were finally getting in that car and making that decision that you were not going to be that anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that there's a lot of things. What did you start to realize that you were going to miss? I used to hate practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that last year that whole last year I was like, I'm going to miss practice.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm going to miss practice. This is actually one of the parts I'm going to miss. And when I got down to that last race, even though, you'd run all these races and be like so frustrated with the car or the balance, and this ain't happening and this is not working, and you're just a miserable individual. Even when things are great, you get this little miserable part of you always living inside. But that last race, I was like, man, I'm never going to run the wall at Homestead again. We were at Homestead for that last race. I'm like, damn, I want to do this more. I'm not ready to stop doing this, right?
Yeah.
So, what are some of those things that happened about you, that Kevin Harvick was starting to have to come to terms with, those difficult things?
Well, I think aside from getting out of the car for the last time, on pit road and seeing your guys, I mean, it's been the same, right? You get out of the car and you look at the guys and you talk about what just happened, and you put your hat and your sunglasses on and walk off. And the last time you just I'm not getting out of the car anymore, and I'm not going to see Cheddar to complain about what just happened or what went good or whatever it was, and we had such a routine that was so simple. Mm-hmm. I think the coolest thing for me in the last race was being able to lead. Yep. And I did look to the right and just say, I know they're cheering, and I know they're happy, and I know it's a moment that I didn't know what was going to happen the rest of the race. So I did look up there and say, that's pretty cool. And I am going to miss that because I love doing things that people don't really think you should do. And, I don't know that people expected us to go out and do the last year the way that we did it, but I wanted to do it better. And I wanted to tell a story for 30 years of racing. But, I think that competitive side of leading laps and having the crowd cheer and knowing that you're giving somebody something to cheer about is something I'll miss that side of it. But I think the thing that I will miss the most is the thing that I'm happiest to get rid of, and that's the competition mindset.
Yeah.
Why are you happy to get rid of that? I just because it consumes you. Yep. It makes you happy, but it also makes you mad and miserable, right? Mm. It's that competitive mindset to be good is 24/7. It's answering that text while you're sitting in the middle of dinner. It's going to that appearance that wasn't scheduled. It's meeting the 5 extra people at the motorhome that is 15 minutes before qualifying instead of an hour. It's just all those things that you think you don't like, but keep you going because it's that fast-paced lifestyle. But the competitive mindset for me, that's the miserable side of it. The good side of it is I love sitting there with Rodney saying, well, what do you think was wrong with the car? Well, were the springs stiff? Were the springs soft? Did we try something different? What was the aero side of it? And sitting there and just having those conversations with Rodney and the engineers and sitting in the competition meetings and hearing what your teammates have to say. But it's also, that's the thing that consumes you constantly. Like right now, as I got out of that car and I came home yesterday and I sat there and I was driving up this morning, usually I sit in my truck and I'm like, oh, we need to probably do this. And at this point of the year, you're thinking about, okay, well, this guy quit or that guy's here. We got to make the cars better. So what do we need to do? I need to go dig into the engineering side of it or the aero side of it or whatever it is and see where Rodney's head is at on what you're thinking about. So you have this constant thought process that has happened for 30 years.
It's a routine.
Yeah, it's a routine. But it's also the thing that Ricky Carmichael texted me this morning and said, well, how does it feel to not have to worry about racing for a championship next year and worry about everything that comes with it? That's a relief. I mean, it's a relief, but it's the thing that I love the most. So it's like an addiction.
That's interesting because a lot of people, and I was even going to ask you, what were you worried or concerned that you weren't going to be able to replace that always being on a 10, right? Like always being on the edge of competition. And a lot of people, at least that have sat at this table, have – when they struggle, it's because that they've lost that competitive opportunity. But here it is. You're bringing up a very interesting and I think real point, by the way. I think it makes perfect sense. Sometimes it's exhausting to have to be that way all the time.
Well, the other thing is, too, there's very few that get out of the car that got out by choice.
That's right.
And so it's just you're building to this whole process to the end, and it's the end. A lot of guys get to the end and they don't know where they're going, what they're doing. Some retire most of them retire because of the fact that they don't have a ride, and then all of a sudden they unretire because they have a ride again, right? It seems like the right thing to do, and I think that's one thing that Mark Martin was very clear on. And he had the retirement tour and then unretired, and
he had several
and raced several more years. He's like, Kevin, just make sure you race until 100% that you're done. And I think it's Joe Girardi said the same thing. He said, Kevin, make sure you take that jersey off for yourself. Don't let them take it off for you. And I think for me, that really hit home. And that was, Joe told me that 5 or 6 years ago when I first started thinking about all this. And Mark was probably 4 or 5 years ago as well. But I think for me, I'm very satisfied with being able to close that chapter myself and say, hey, here's how I want to go out the last year. We want to tell a story for 30 years of racing and reintroduce the fans to the things that you've done, because a lot of people don't know who Dale Earnhardt Sr. is. They only know Dale Earnhardt as Dale Earnhardt Jr., right? And that's just the natural progression of sports in general, right? You have these generations.
Getting old,
yeah. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, we need to go back and reintroduce the 29 car, and we need to go back and show some of the old late models and how you came up. And so that was really something that we tried to do, was tell a story for 30 years, make sure you've fulfilled that competition itch for me, it's the competitive mindset. And how do we do it? By being as competitive as possible the last year, because I didn't want to go out and run last. So we only did that once this year. We ran last at Bristol, but that was really the only time that we just absolutely sucked so bad that it was embarrassing. But
nobody remembers.
I know. But I think
I remember you after. I remember how you were after that.
Yeah. But that's that miserable mindset that you live in, and it's not miserable because I enjoyed it, but it is. It's miserable for the people around you that are with you every day, and I think for me, being able to just get to the end and say, all right, that's the end. Now we're going to go do these other things. But man, there's a lot that consumes your mind when you do it right.